Hello, everybody. It's Debbie Potts, and I am going to talk about metabolic testing today. I am ready to go. Just went for a nice morning sunrise, even though it was marine layer, couldn't see the sun, but it was morning and it was low tide. So I went for a great walk on the beach for over an hour this morning and enjoyed the moment to get my mind right for the week. It's a Monday as I record this. And I did lift weights, little back and bicep, 3 to 5 reps of some lat pull down and some row and some TRX work and some pullovers, bicep curl, overhead press with a little squat and some mobility drills because it is Monday, my active recovery day. So I am ready to record a podcast episode for you on PNOE, metabolic testing, as I start my business in person doing metabolic testing of something I've been wanting to do since I tested with New Leaf Metabolic Testing Cart back in 2005 until about 2012. I had access to a machine at the Bellevue Club where I used to live and work. And then we had our own testing equipment in my fitness studio, Fitness Forward Studio, until Lifetime Fitness bought New Leaf Fitness Testing, and all the equipment was worthless because we couldn't buy test credits or buy new parts for the machine. So then I met PNOE founder Panos at Ironman Hawaii on the street. They had a booth set up, tent set up in 2018. And last year I went to finally decided I really love testing and not guessing. Obviously, it's what I do as a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, FDN for short. And we do functional lab testing. And I really always love this metabolic testing as I help people improve fat loss, improve performance, and longevity. And that's what PNOE metabolic testing and the breath analysis report will give you as an individual. Doesn't mean you have to be an athlete, just anyone that cares about getting healthy and figuring out how to fuel train and perform your best for life, right? So I looked at doing PNOE metabolic testing, purchasing it in 2022. Sounds space age, but that was last year in March. And I was actually in Kona, my healing magical place, and decided to buy it. And it was just a testing equipment, not all this extra stuff they make you do nowadays, but it was PNOE metabolic testing equipment and their certification program with Daniel Crumbach. And I purchased it. And then a week later decided, I'm not ready yet. I'm living in a new town, North San Diego. I moved from Bellevue actually 3 years today. And I don't know enough people and I don't own a gym anymore. So I don't know how I'm going to make this work. I just love testing. So a year later, this year, I was in Lava Man triathlon in Kona again. And I got the same message, maybe from Madame Pele. Hawaii, Kona always speaks to me and helps me heal and figure out my purpose. And it was this is it. This is what I love to do. I like working with my people, my endurance athletes that are driven, ambitious, high performers, people that are really motivated to optimize their health and really get a personalized program. Test and not guess. You don't know what you don't know. And instead of just figuring out how to train and what to do without just really knowing what your body needs. So I made the purchase, but I have a problem. They only sell PNOE equipment by itself, or as everyone's doing now, these subscription programs, basically, that you have to get a metabolic expert assigned to you and you're dependent on them. And I hate having to do that, but you need the test reports each time and you have the equipment. My problem is, we'll get to really educating you, not me going on a rant, but just going through, I am the metabolic expert. I don't need to hire someone that is metabolic expert. I've done this for a long time and I don't need a dietitian to give someone a personalized nutrition program. So if you are looking at doing PNOE, the PNOE Grow is for someone that just wants to do the testing and doesn't want to do all the coaching. So you just do the tests and then give them the rest. But I like doing it all. So It is a metabolic portable analyzer, which back in the day, if you look at my pictures from New Leaf, we had a computer laptop on a stand and we had the machine and it was hooked up. So I couldn't really go places. Now I can take it in a suitcase, and like I'm going to Kona again for Christmas time, a couple weeks. I'm going to pack it up and take it with me and test my fellow athlete friends that live in Kona, the resting and active test. It does help measure markers that look at your brain function based if you hyperventilate. So we're analyzing the heart, lungs, and cells of your metabolism, your posture. So if you are, like, I'm going to try to work with chiropractors and movement specialists and trainers, that if you struggle to breathe properly, maybe it's your T-spine, your thoracic spine, or maybe you're just tight, you're kyphotic, and really working on creating a strength training program based on some clues that we can collect from this test. If you are inefficient at breathing, if you hyperventilate at rest, a lot of people are not aware of that. And if we just need some simple things of some T-spine rotation, some maybe extension, and really work on your posture to help improve your breathing. We also, of course, look at your metabolism, how much you're burning fat and carbohydrates at rest, and then your exercise test during different heart zones. We'll figure out your numbers and recovery. So one thing, going back, if you want to do metabolic testing with me, you can find me in North San Diego. This is a screen I'm sharing on our YouTube channel, just their sales pitch program here, but some of the information is helpful. The Pnoe Metabolic Analysis System is portable, so that was a big sell for me, and you're conducting an AMR, active metabolism, and a RMR, resting metabolism rate test. So we're able to assess those numbers. Now here's the assessment talking about breathing and really focusing. The difference of what we used to do is just look at your metabolic crossover point and where your peak VO2 anaerobic threshold information was. But now we can test so much more. So the data we collect from the heart rate strap, we'll be able to look at your heart rate variability, your LF, your low frequency, and HF, high frequency, how strong your breathing frequency and your heart rate to your breath. And so all this data. So let's go over what it teaches you. So breath contains the most accurate picture of your health. It reveals how every critical part of your body, including your metabolism, your heart, your lungs, your brain, and your cells, works, and identifies that the ones that pose an obstacle to your health and performance. Obstacle, limiter, or I like to say more positively, your area of opportunity. So we figure out, what are your limiters? What's holding you back to be your best self? What's holding you back to improve your ability to burn fat, especially if you can correlate that with your lab test, even a blood chemistry assessment I'm adding in my packages for my clients. Like, let's dive in to figure out, okay, why are you struggling to lose weight? You're doing all the right things, but what is going on? Do we have some hidden sources of internal chronic stress that are impacting your metabolism? Look at a full thyroid panel, look at your glucose and your insulin, and look at your inflammatory markers. So it's pretty cool that a breath analysis can be used to figure out a lot of information. And so I like to just collect more clues, more data, and even correlate that with your NutriSense. If you have a CGM is NutriSense, or another one, if we want to look at your Aura or Whoop scores, collecting data really helps to put it all together and put the missing pieces of a puzzle together to help improve your fitness and nutrition program. But just embracing the aging process, I really want to go into how I can improve myself a second half of my life and not blame the aging process, but enhance it and thrive, not struggle. So if you're looking at the YouTube channel, Low Carb Athlete, Debbie Potts, you can see how we can measure with your oxygen consumption, heart, cells, the brain, lungs, and posture. The posture we'll get from the respiratory power marker. There's a respiratory capability marker, your cardiovascular fitness, and your aerobic health that are related to your heart health. Your cells will look at your metabolism, fat burn efficiency, and recovery capacity. So during the fitness test, it is only 9 to 12 minutes, a 3-minute warm-up, 9 to 12-minute test that I do a personalized program protocol for you based on some a check we'll do beforehand per perceived exertion level, figure out where your speed will be to starting, and then each minute increment, how much percentage we go up based on some calculations we'll do. And then we have a 2-minute or so recovery that you just stop after the test, and we measure how fast does your heart rate come down and how do you recover the oxygen to carbon dioxide ratio. So we look at this picture here, heart, cells, lungs, and the vagus nerve is connected. Obviously, you'll listen to my previous podcast, Heart Rate Variability, and that vagus nerve is the gut-brain connection, measuring your nervous system. And so if we can look at your oxygen in and carbon dioxide out, we can also tell your biological age. So that's super cool. All right. So how it works, if you're looking at slides, this is a sales pitch deck that I have from Pinoy, but you do the resting test. It just takes 10 minutes of lying there still with the face mask on. And then I work on the analysis with Pinoy, but we'll get a report back. And then I follow up with my clients and I'll create a program based on the report suggestions and then tweak it a little bit. But we're looking at where are you now? So the analysis afterwards with the metabolic expert is me. And we go through that. And then I put it into your training peaks or your practice better or your chronometer. So what's really cool for an exercise test, we can help figure out, okay, your fitness program, do you need more resistance training, cardio training, or interval training? What percentage do you spend that each week? So Pinoy sells it to you as someone looking at to buy this. They're registered dietitians, craft a diet and exercise plan. Well, I'm that person. I'm not going to use them. So I work on creating a program. Plus the recommendations are like 400, 500 grams of carbs a day. And we know we don't need that many carbs. We want to have more protein and healthy fats and carbs, depending on your intensity of your workout and timing of it. So that's a different story, but we want to enhance your metabolism and manage your stress so we don't have the glucose spikes over 30. And so we want to make sure our stress response, stress management, our heart rate variability, we're looking at all the elements, the holistic method. But going back to this infographic on the slides, energy consumption and fueling. I love this part for my athletes and just people trying to exercise. Have purpose to your workouts. Zone 1, what is zone 1 for you? That's your recovery. Zone 2, that's your endurance training, your long, slow, comfortable, I can stay here, continuous exercise. Zone 3, your longer tempo workouts, intervals. Zone 4 is going to be more your medium length intensity intervals. And zone 5 are those all out short intensity intervals, 10, 30 seconds. And we'll go into that a little bit later, but zone 3, 4, and 5, if you're doing intervals, you need to come down to zone 1. Most people do not do interval training correctly. They're just staying up there. Maybe go zone 5, come down to zone 4, then go zone 5. That's not interval training. Sorry to break it to you. And most people are not doing zone 2. They're doing zone 3. And so this test will help figure out what are those zones for you so you are getting the benefits, and we'll go into each one. So we're analyzing the rate which you burn fat and carbohydrates during training and determine the nutrition before, during, and after exercise. Now, I don't like their recommendations. Their registered dietitians are going to give you more things like it says here, having raisins and a banana versus prioritizing protein and nature's carbs or that. But just I look at the right amount of nutrition for the individual. So breath analysis. What do we get from that? So I can measure the test on anything with watts. Like this is a picture of the erg, skier erg. There's a rowing machine erg, a salt bike. Those all have watts. So if we can figure out watts and go up every minute, we can measure the information on there and analyze your breath. So breath analysis, what does that do? It's a gold standard, they say, in measuring metabolism, directing metabolic slowdown, and prescribing the plan to avert weight loss plateau. I hate the word weight loss. I prefer to say fat loss. We want to lose fat, not weight. We want to gain muscle and lose fat. The gold standard in determining the fat and carb burn and determine optimal macronutrient intake for sustainable fat loss. Now, that's what we can figure out. I don't like Pinoy's recommendations. Workout days and non-workout days, they don't change the percentage. And your percentage of macros, protein, fat, carbs, should change on your rest days versus your workout days. You shouldn't be eating the same amount of carbs on the days you're not working out. You should be prioritizing protein and healthy fats and strategic carb timing of real source carbs on your workout days. So we want to look at that to determine your meal, exercise timing, minimize hunger and feel hunger, and elevating your energy. So that's where I come in, working one-on-one with people and their follow-up and tracking on their chronometer or Practice Better. We sync all that data together and then just work together for a few months. My programs are 6 months that I work with people because it takes a while. And if we just meet a coaching call twice a month, once a month, or 3 times over the 6 months and do everything online. So the metabolic testing for longevity, the breath analysis through PNOE, we're looking at quantifying your anti-aging and biological age according to American Heart Association. It's a trusted method in medicine for determining limitations in lungs, heart, cells, and blood circulation. And it's also the gold standard in analyzing breath health and the impact on brain function, which is the hyperventilation part we find. If you have or not, look at how many breaths you're taking per minute, and determining if you need more breath work exercises for enhancing your mood, to managing your stress, to help your focus. That's when we just slow down and breathe, and doing the box breathing, doing the different types of breath work, and working on how you can calm down and not rush like I'm doing right now. So how do we measure your performance? So remember, fat loss, performance, and longevity. Actually, my taglines in my fitness studio and my business too is fuel, train, perform. So we're testing all that. So how do we test performance? We're measuring your VO2 max and getting even your peak VO2 max, and look at your peak heart rate. So I'll ask you questions before you test. If you have been training with heart rate monitor, ideally with the chest strap, not just your watch, but where is your heart rate been in the past few months when you're training, and then what's your highest heart rate you've seen. So kind of collect lots of data before we actually do your test. But this is a great way, a gold standard, to determine athletic improvement and recovery capacity. So we want to retest every 2 months and then every 3 months after we get going. This is a gold standard for determining calorie, fat, carbohydrate, and protein needs during pre-workout, post-workout, inter-workout nutrition. And the gold standards in determining your training zones. And Dr. Daniel Crumbach created an amazing program that sadly they're not using anymore. So just note, if you wanted to purchase this for your own business, their so-called certification program is not, let me see, it's back on here, but it's not offered anymore. So I've been arguing with that a lot, but I already had access to the metabolic expert training that Daniel created. It's a 30-hour course in 3 parts and exam. And I did that, and it's no longer available because they say it's not accurate anymore, but I did have access to it. Their new certification they're offering, they say, is valued $1,000, and it's really a joke. It's 30 minutes, and it's one of their guys reading the report, what all those markers mean on your report, which you can get your report and read it yourself. So it's not even a certification, and it's not even worth anything. It's not even worth, I don't know, $25. It's free on the website. So don't think that's a certification you're going to get. Hopefully you have your own training, because they want you to depend on them for everything. So that's my rant. But the RMR assessment is pretty cool. You want to lie down and do it, not sit upright. And we'll measure it on my iPad or iPhone and get the data real time. And then within 24 hours, you'll get this really cool report, I'm going to say, that I email my clients, and then we'll figure out what to do with this data to create a program with you. But ideally, you do both the resting and the exercise test. So from the RMR report, the markers you'll get a report on: metabolic fitness, resting metabolic rate, fat burning efficiency, heart fitness, lung fitness, breathing and cognition, breathing and posture, diabetes risk, based on if you're not burning any fat at rest, medical history. We'll look at your training history and nutrition history, and I'll work on that. And I use my nutritional therapy assessment into NutriQ forms that I'll do in the intake. And then they have an app, but I don't use it. It's something you can look at doing if you are looking at using Pnoe for your business. But again, I like more personalized approach. The exercise test. So the AMR, active metabolic rate test, this is where you can measure aerobic health, cardiovascular fitness, respiratory capacity, respiratory capability, expiratory power, respiratory coordination, breathing and cognition, breathing and stability, fat burning efficiency, metabolic rate, high intensity performance, movement, economy, and recovery capacity. All that is this big, huge report. And you'll see where you have areas of opportunity, where are your improvements. So it comes in this cool little suitcase. It's pretty simple. And this is their kind of sales pitch, but I'm going to go through. If you want to purchase this, it's a big investment. I'm spending a lot of money in the next 3 years, about $17K. It comes with a report. And then remember, if you want to buy this, if you are a coach already, you may just want to do the device. I'm stuck into this 36-month contract I can't get out of. Their marketing program, certification is inaccurate. It's $1,000 value they say on their website, and it's a joke. Their marketing, it has stuff on there you can pull up. It's all right. But the metabolic expert, they want you to depend on them for everything. So I don't like that because I'm just getting a report from them. But it is nice to have someone that, okay, this isn't working, this happened, pitch questions to in the report, but you want to make sure it's accurate. So you need to know how to analyze it yourself and know sources of error. So it's up to you. And maintenance is in that. So they kind of get you, as I did, stuck into the 36-month program because you think that's out. Now the certification is what was misleading for me because it's not Daniel's program. It's this new 30-minute crap video. So those that are already metabolic experts like myself, excuse me, that did New Leaf years ago, you can watch all the videos, how to use it on their YouTube channel and just get the device. Maintenance, I don't think it's accurate, $1,000 a year, but that's kind of the test credits. You can just pay yourself separately. So that's my complaint about that, but it's a cool mask. You can take it. But let's go through and look at the benefits of it, the zoning. Okay, so when we do the metabolic test, I'm going to go through the science. We're using science to create zones instead of guessing, because that's what we always did. Maffetone, max aerobic function, heart rate. This test, we're going to measure your volume oxygen, your carbon dioxide, your ventilatory thresholds, which we call VT1 and VT2. RER is respiratory exchange ratio that we can see the fat to carb fuel source. Metabolic switching, you'll see metabolic flexibility. It's going from fat to carbohydrate. Where is that zone? So we'll see where the zone fuel source switches. BF, breathing frequencies, we'll look at that. Expiration, other devices they can add on, and we're looking at your heart rate or the wattage on a bike or other machines. What we're looking at is what fuel source we're using in the different zones. So I'll get Daniel eventually on my podcast to go through the 5 zones and what fuel source we're using and when it's appropriate and beneficial to be in that zone as an athlete. So we want to know what zone you switch from fat to carbs, what exercise intensity is that? And so the exercise intensity drives a fuel switch. The zones are athlete specific. So each person switches fuel sources at different heart rates or loads based on your system's ability to provide energy at each intensity level. Those zones, and we identify those limitations, are modality specific. So bikers or triathletes, we want to do the bike test and we want to do a treadmill test. And the zones change a lot if we figure out here's a training program for you. So that's why I think it's so important to work with a coach that understands this data and you're not just depending on Pinoe's metabolic efficiency and registered dietitian to create a program. We want to work with you as your coach to figure it out. So the fuel sources by zone and training type I want to go over. So this is from our program with Daniel Krumback. Recovery zone 1, that's where you're burning free fatty acid. Zone 2, the long, slow distance is cardiovascular, but the fuel source is aerobic glycolysis. Zone 3 is that tempo, longer intervals, kind of where I'd be probably for a half marathon, 10K race, anaerobic glycolysis. Zone 4 are the medium intervals, and that's your lactate phosphorylation. And then the zone 5 we hear a lot about lately, that's that SIT. Stacy Sims talks about the short intensity training, cardio bursts, all out sprints, HIIT training. Those are short intervals, 10 to 30 seconds all out. That uses your ATP, PC, phosphocreatine. So we want to look at that. So let's go through the structural training versus functional training. So we're working on focusing on structural training first over function, make sure everything's working right. So we eliminate those limitations so you can improve your best as an athlete or improve the aging process. So we want to improve the cardiac strength, the respiratory volumes, how you can increase mitochondria density and capillarization, and then resistance training to improve muscle hypertrophy. And then there's functional strength training that we use functional training to improve specific functional improvements. So if we work on your limitations or we don't find any anymore, then we can add on the next layer. So that's where we'll do more structural training and then move into the functional training as speed work, intervals to improve coordination, modality specific as hill climbing, hill repeats, and the resistance training or on the bike or hills running. So you improve max strength, power, and endurance. So we want to figure out what's best for you and get rid of those limiting structures first. And if there's no limiting structure, we're going to train function. So super important to retest. Okay, let's dive into each zone. So zone 1, recovery, working on structure. This stimulates our oxygen delivery beyond utilization requirements. And this is all from Daniel Krumback. Increasing oxygen delivery to the limbs. This stimulates elevated breathing pattern to promote metabolic waste and carbon dioxide, CO2, clearance by normalizing the acid-base balance, your pH, and recovery. And then we go into continuous cardio, LSD. Why do we want to train here? Why do we hear so much about zone 2? This is why I think you need to test, not guess what your zone 2 is, because you might be too low or too high. This is where you increase your mitochondria density, increase your capillarization and tissue adaptation. And this is where we work on endurance if we're working on functional goals, if you're training for a specific race. Now, zone 3, this is our tempo, our long runs, and this is where we improve our lactate shuttle, protein stimulation, VO2 cardiopulmonary development, and then our functional training. If we need to create more specific goals after structural training has been optimized, we'll do speed endurance here. So 10, 20-minute pieces. Okay, so zone 4, we've gone over to medium intervals. This is going to be metabolic buffering is your structural benefit, and then your coordination, speed, and strength will be here for your functional goals once you get there. And then our favorite zone 5, short intervals, short intensity intervals, mitochondria density, capillarization, coordination, and strength. Okay, so how do we figure this out? So I wanted to share these slides, even though I'm probably not supposed to, but since they're not offering this program anymore, I'm going to use it. If you are in zone 1, we figure that out based on first identifying what your adjusted fat max is. That's where we burn the highest amount of fat with the lowest carb use to identify the top of zone 1, the bottom of zone 2. And then we take 10 to 15 beats below that adjusted fat max to figure out your zone 1. So you can see on the infographic what we look at and what I'll kind of play with. Okay, here's where you're burning the most fat, a lot of calories, and less amount of carbs. And then we can subtract 15 from there and we can find that zone. Okay, and zone 2, you can see in the picture, we've got fat carb crossover point, adjusted fat max. And this is where aerobic glycolysis is the main fuel source before carb utilization exceeds fat utilization. that switch, fuel switch, goes to anaerobic glycolysis. Super cool, right? So then we can identify where your body at this moment in time, not 5 years ago, but right now, where is my zone 2? And that will change based on my training. So adjusted fat max to carb fat crossover, that's your zone 2. So zone 3 would be the bottom of that carb fat crossover. And then the top of zone 3, that tempo zone, will be where we see the breathing change. So we'll start to see this ventilatory threshold 2, VT2, where we see there's a rise in breathing, 20 to 30 breaths per minute, and our CO2 increases. So we have that. What's interesting, that the BF, breath frequency, is driven up by chemoreceptors responding to the increase in carbon dioxide production. So our body is so smart, it senses, oh, there's more carbon dioxide production here. I need to make some adjustment so we keep that pH level better. So we're going to initiate zone 3 is secondary to the fuel system in use anaerobic glycolysis. So that's how you can tell on the test report where your breathing is changing, where that oxygen, carbon dioxide is changing, and we can identify all that information there. It's pretty fun. Now, zone 4, we're getting more of those medium long intervals. This is where we're going to go, okay, where is that VT2? Minus 10 beats, increase in that breathing 30 to 40 breaths per minute, and see a rise in the VE, start to second drive in the BF breathing changes. So those chemoreceptors are changing, the increase in carbon dioxide production, the pH changes will initiate that zone 4 secondary fuel source, the more lactate and phosphorylation. So that's your zone 4. And then how do we figure out zone 5? Well, then we look at start of your bottom of zone 5 is the start of the drive, BF drive, 184 beats is this example. And then where's your maximum heart rate? Where do we get to? So, which is hard because I'm finding the tests I've done, a lot of people aren't comfortable going that high. They have the choice when to stop, but we want to wait to see that carbon dioxide go down and carbon dioxide goes up, and your peak, your RER should change and go peak heart rate. So we see some different data, but it is challenging, but even it's 30 seconds, it's just 1 minute. So we start to see changes here, the breathing 40 breaths per minute to your max heart rate. And we'll see the increase in carbon dioxide production. And again, the pH changes, that the ATP system will change, ATP phosphocreatine. So if max heart rate is not identified during the test, we can use what you reported, what's the highest you've seen on that same exercise in the past few months. Because as I said, it's hard. Okay, so remember, it's zones or activity specific. And then we're using science, not math. So if you can, getting this test done is obviously test and not guess is what we say all the time. So using your devices, and then we can go to Training Peaks or whatever program you use, Garmin, enter those data in there. So love that information. And then when we're creating a program, this other section we did in our course is using the information from your resting and active test to figure out, okay, how should this person train? If you didn't burn a lot of fat at rest, we need to tweak your nutrition and how your exercise training is and resistance training. We're looking at body composition, maybe you need more protein, less carbs, and higher amount of healthy fats with that protein. We want to look at reevaluating your nutrition for the next month or 2 months, and then retesting. And then maybe your exercise program, we need more strength training. Do you need more interval training? What is that you need? And then we'll look at what are your goals? What are your limitations we identified in the test? Focus on those first, and then work on that structural improvement, knowing that we might need more zone 2 and zone 5 interval training and do it properly. So zone 5, get there, hold that heart rate, hold that intensity 10, 30 seconds, and then get all the way down zone 1 before you do it again. So that's what's cool about doing this. Exercise programming is super fun for me as a coach to figure out your training type. So if you need zone 2, zone 5, for example, if we need to improve your carb to fat, if you're not burning enough fat at rest, we might look at a training differently. If you have, a decline in higher intensity efficiency, so you have not your area of opportunity might be more zone 4, zone 5. We can identify that with your oxygen consumption and breath frequency at the higher heart rate zones. Might see if it's strength. And so we can get all this information about where your limitations should be and where we need to improve. So you get this great report, metabolic efficiency. We can create that strength training or respiratory goals, maybe need some breathing exercises. And so that's what I love, looking at. What do we find you need to work on? Fat loss, strength training, interval training, how to train correctly. Because a lot of people are doing the nutrition, but they're not doing the exercise right. Or they're doing the exercise, but they're not training the right zones. So that's what I was looking at. The breath analysis part is easy. You can see the picture on my blog put into here on the breathing, and make sure we can analyze how chronic inflammation and overworking our immune system with chronic stress, doing too much in life, rushing around too much, doing too much of everything. This can be correlated to autoimmune disorders, low back pain, digestive disorders, gut health issues. So we can look at the breath markers at rest, help us with our markers that we identify during your exercise. So lots more information on my website, how breathing affects the nervous system. I thought this was a great article from Pinoy on fight or flight, flight, freeze, and how we want to measure our heart rate variability, but identifying your LF to HF score, how your digestive system, cardiovascular, immune, and hormone regulations impacted. So I talk a lot about that with my chronic stress issues with clients to improve their digestion. Is working on, might not be what you're eating, but how you're eating it, when you're eating it, and looking at your immune system, looking at your gut health, and how we breathe can affect our body. So the cardiovascular strain, posture and skeletal muscular disorders, brain oxygenation. So if you're hyperventilating, it's pretty interesting how that can impact so much of your health. So we want to read more about that and look at how all these mechanisms impact with one another. So you can look at the picture here. If you don't have the right breathing frequency, you can impact your nervous system, the sympathetic versus parasympathetic. Sympathetic dominance, you're more activated in fight or flight and kind of stuck over there, more than resiliency, switching back and forth to parasympathetic. Diaphragm, your narrowing of blood vessels, and how this nervous system can in fact impact your stomach, your heart, your immune system cells, and hormones. How does that happen? Digestion problems, heart disease, chronic inflammation, autoimmune disorders, type 2 diabetes, anxiety, depression. That's what I've been talking a lot about recently, because I was speaking about chronic stress impacts the whole you on the low carb cruise last week. But a lot of people don't realize, if you are doing the nutrition right for your body type and your activity load, are you stressed out all the time? Are you eating in a stressed state? Are you just stressed out that you're raising your blood sugar all the time with not even eating anything? So if you're not sleeping, if your cortisol melatonin rhythm's off, if your gut health is off, you're not feeling good either. If you're not digesting your food properly and breaking your protein to amino acids, neurotransmitter production's off. So it's all related. So that's an article I put into my website, Test and Not Guess with Pinoy, but just how the breath analysis is one of the best assessments. They say the only assessment known to science. Analyze your heart, lungs, cells, blood circulation. And it's been used many years, but now it's easier because it's portable. And so you can get more data. And from all this, we can find your VO2 peak, your VCO2, your tidal volume is the volume of air exhaled in one breath, your breathing frequency, number of breaths completed in 1 minute, your minute ventilation, the volume of air exhaled in 1 minute, and on and on and on. I won't read all that, but that's on my website too, debbiepotts.net, test and not guess. So if you want to get a test done, check out this web page. I put the video, and there's Daniel, about how to prepare for the test. And I put on here everything we measure, the metabolic rate and the high intensity performance for evaluating your movement economy, fat burning efficiency, breathing and stability, cognition, and all the respiratory. I think it's all such great information you need if you're looking at weight loss, fat loss, if you're looking at performance gains, if you're looking at longevity, enhancing that aging process. And what does the results mean and how you can make improvements on your next test. So head to debbiepotts.net and learn more. And I am here to help you. Come visit North San Diego. See ya.